A haiku. Turning left, then right. My dad's GPS struggles. Recalculating. An odd haiku, to be sure. But then, it's odd the places one's mind will go when you're trapped in the back seat of a car for 90 minutes. Fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, and anyone who's ever had too much time on your hands, that recently happened to me. I was trapped in the back seat of my parents' car. And during my captivity, I wrote that humorous haiku. I developed an incredible invention, and I had a very interesting insight. You see, it was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and to help celebrate, they invited me out to New York to spend a week on the town with them. Broadway shows, fine dining, Times Square was a great trip. My parents were exceedingly generous. In fact, I'd say that the trip was perfect. If it wasn't for this one little thing. You have to understand that my parents practically grew up in Manhattan. They know the streets of New York as well as any cab driver driving today. My father certainly drives a lot like a New York City cab driver, which despite earlier comparisons to Roman cab drivers is still pretty bad. But that is not to say that he is not prone to making a wrong turn once in a while. Which is why wherever they go, no matter how far the distance, my parents always start by plugging in their Garmin GPS system, which I applaud. But what then drives me nuts is they will argue with every piece of advice the Garmin gives them. And I don't use the word advice by accident. The Garmin might say, turn right. But it might as well say, I recommend you turn right, but if you have any other ideas at all, go for it. Because that's how my parents hear it. For example, in 500 feet, turn left onto Broadway. My mother, oh Al, Broadway's going to be so crowded this time of day. Go 2 more blocks up to 7th. Recalculating. Or the Garmin might say, enter the Brooklyn Queens Expressway. My father this time, I hate driving on the BQE. I'm going on up to the Cross Island Expressway. Recalculating. And even when there's only one way to go, they'll still find a way to disagree with the Garmin. Cross the Manhattan Bridge. Oh, Al, that's ridiculous. Drive down that embankment and submarine your way across the Hudson. Recalculating. So I hope you can appreciate why, after 90 minutes of this, driving from the center of Long Island, where my parents live, to the center of Manhattan, that I would refer to myself as trapped in the back seat of that car? Turn right. No! Recalculating. Turn left. No! Recalculating. Turn around. You're going the wrong way. Never! Recalculating! And me all the while in the back seat. Oh! Well, when I finally got tired of rolling my eyes at my parents, I let my mind wander a little bit, and that's when I came up with my humorous haiku. And, proud of myself, I decided to share my haiku with my parents. But it turns out humor is really in the mind of the beholder. So I returned to my vinyl and velour prison, and that's when I came up with my incredible invention. Now hear me out. What if, instead of a GPS, a global positioning satellite, we could develop an LPS, a life positioning satellite. So whenever we made a wrong turn in life, it would just say, recalculating, and send us back on our course. I certainly could have used one of these last week. My girlfriend had invited me over for dinner. I was late and I didn't call, and when I got there, I said, I thought dinner was going to be ready. I know, believe me. I was there. I got the look. You know the look. You don't want the look. Well, that whole mess took a lot longer to clean up than if I had had an LPS on my hip. Imagine it this way. I thought dinner was going to be ready. Recalculating, drive 1.5 miles to the forest and don't come back without roses. Hey, honey, I brought you some roses. Is there anything that I could do to help with dinner? You have arrived at your final destination. I mean, wouldn't you buy one? I couldn't wait to tell this idea to my parents. I was going to be a gazillionaire. But at that particular moment, there was a three-way standoff going on in the front seat. My mother was insisting my father take the next exit. My father had ideas of his own, and the Garmin, having given up altogether, was now speaking only in Mandarin. I figured it would keep, so I let my mind wander some more, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that an LPS, however great an idea, technologically, impossible. But that's when I had my interesting insight. And it occurred to me that we, all of us, have an LPS. But the satellites which orbit around our life are not up in space. They're down here on Earth with us. They're our bosses, our coaches, our teachers, our mentors, our parents. Right there in the front seat were the very people who had taught me right from wrong. My father taught me how to drive safely, even if sometimes my driving is likened to that of a New York City cab driver. My mother taught me never to leave the house with dirty underwear and always make sure my hair looked nice. Well, at least I have on clean underwear. But the point is that the more I thought about it, the less I wanted to roll my eyes at my parents, and the more like them I realized I was. I witnessed countless examples of them ignoring the advice of their GPS, and truth be told, I've often ignored the advice of my LPS. But sometimes, when my life would get way off course, I would take whatever advice my LPS had for me, and I would follow it to a T. A lot like on this trip, when our car got way off course, my parents finally had to admit that the GPS might know a thing or two about directions, and followed its advice all the way to the hotel. So as we were finally pulling in, 90 minutes after we started what should have been a 60-minute trip, I had one final bit of inspiration. And that is that in life, not unlike this particular car trip, we could make many wrong turns and still end up where we're going. It just takes a little recalculating.